Ever feel like you're just drowning in documents? Mountains of files, and you're desperately trying to pull out those key insights?
Oh, absolutely.
Like those reports, those PDFs, those Word docs, and those PowerPoint decks that just seem to never end.
I feel that.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right?
Mm.
But what if you had an AI that could act as your personal assistant, your expert in the field, to kind of sift through all that and give you exactly what you need?
Right.
To see what your competitors are up to identify those market trends, those big industry shifts that are happening right now.
I think that's the dream for a lot of people, isn't it?
It is. And that's what we're diving into today. An AI advisor for document analysis. But not just any AI advisor. We're going to be talking about how to do this reliably.
Yeah, reliably. Because you're right, we're bombarded with information these days.
Exactly.
And it's not just about having access to the information, but it's about being able to extract the knowledge that you need when you need it. And that's what's going to make you successful. Whether you're a researcher, you're a reporter, or maybe you're an R&D professional.
So today, we're looking at how an AI advisor that's driven by something called an ontology can actually give you much more reliable results than maybe the traditional approaches like vector databases and semantic search.
Yeah.
And this is especially crucial for those of you who need that pinpoint accuracy.
Right.
That deep understanding of the context of your information.
Yes.
Especially if you're in a secure environment and you're working with a smaller language model.
Yeah, smaller but still very powerful.
Powerful, exactly.
We'll be looking at a prototype called the DX AI Advisor.
Okay.
And it works specifically with Gemma 3 models.
So let's unpack this DX AI Advisor. When you upload these files, these documents, these PowerPoints, how does it take that and turn it into something you can actually use? What's the process?
Well, you upload your files, right? And as you mentioned, PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint, plain text, even Markdown.
A real variety.
A real variety. The first thing it does, it parses them. So essentially, it pulls out all the text content.
It's like taking all the words off the pages, putting them in a big digital pile.
Yeah, like a big digital pile of words. And then what it does, which I think is really fascinating, is that it uses a large language model. In this case, it's one of the Gemma 3 models.
Okay.
To dig into that text. And it's not just looking at the words themselves, it's trying to identify what are the entities, the important players, the ideas, the topics. And crucially, it also tries to map out the relationships between them. And then, of course, it also looks for any structured data that might be there.
So it's not just seeing keywords, it's actually understanding what these things are and how they're related.
Exactly.
That's really important for context, isn't it?
It is, yeah, especially when we're talking about reliability and trustworthiness.
Absolutely.
And the output of that stage is what we call an ontology.
An ontology.
An ontology.
Now, what is that? For people who haven't encountered that term before, what are we talking about here?
So think of it like a very organized map of knowledge.
Okay.
So it's a knowledge graph, if you like. And in this case, for the DX AI Advisor, it's structured in a standard format called TTL, which basically just allows other systems to understand that knowledge map.
There's like a universal language for this map of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes sure that the AI is consistent in its understanding and that we can actually use it effectively.
Okay, so we've got this knowledge map being built, and we've got all this text from the documents. Is there anything else happening at the same time?
Yes. In parallel, what the system does is it generates what we call embeddings. Embeddings. So these are, think of them as a way for the AI to understand the essence of a word or a phrase.
Okay.
It captures the meaning in a way that allows it to see similarities, even if the words aren't exactly the same. So we do that, both for the documents and for the ontology. And then we use those embeddings to build what we call a FES vector database. And FESIS is just a particular type of database that's optimized for searching based on semantic similarity.
Okay, so it's looking for things that mean the same thing, even if they're not worded the same way.
Exactly.
So we've got this knowledge map, the ontology, and we've got this database that understands the meaning behind the text. How do they work together?
So that's where we introduce the AI advisor agent.
The agent.
The agent. Now, this is like the brain of the system.
Okay.
So it orchestrates everything. It uses both the vector database and the ontology.
Okay.
And when you ask it a question, it's going to use both those resources to really understand your question.
Right.
Explore those relationships in the ontology and find that really precise information that you need.
And the goal here is to provide those trend analysis reports.
Exactly. Those trend analysis reports.
So essentially automatically generate reports based on all of this data.
Exactly, that's it.
Okay, so there are two main ways then that the DXAI advisor can find information for you. There's the vector search, and then there's this ontology-driven search.
That's right.
And you said that this ontology approach gives us a lot more reliability.
It does, yeah.
So how do these two compare in terms of giving us trustworthy results?
Okay, so let's start with vector search, because actually the DXAI advisor uses that as a baseline. So when you type in a search query, vector search is going to look for chunks of text in your documents that have a similar meaning to your query.
Okay.
And it's based on those embeddings that we talked about.
Right.
So essentially it's finding those passages that are about the same topic as what you're asking about.
Right. So it's helpful for finding general information, but what does using the ontology add to that?
So ontology-based search, it goes a lot deeper. Sure. So instead of just finding similar text, it actually understands those relationships between the key entities in your documents. And that lets you ask much more precise questions about those relationships.
Oh, I see.
For example, you can say, show me all the companies that are competing with company X, or what products are mentioned in documents that talk about market trend Y.
You can be a lot more specific with your questions.
Exactly. And you can filter not just by keywords, but by the type of entity and the relationship.
So not just what's mentioned, but how these things are connected.
Exactly.
And I think a good analogy here would be vector search is like saying, find me all the paragraphs that talk about electric vehicles. But ontology-based search is saying, find me the companies that actually make electric vehicles that have a battery range over 300 miles that partner with these specific battery technology providers that are mentioned in these reports.
That's a fantastic analogy.
So it's about understanding that web of connections, not just isolated mentions.
You've got it.
So this ontology is really the key to getting those more reliable insights. How does the AI advisor actually use it to enhance the information retrieval and analysis?
So it's all very integrated. When you ask your question, the AI advisor first analyzes it to figure out what are those core concepts that you're interested in.
Right.
And then it uses the ontology to explore the web of relationships around those concepts.
So it's kind of thinking, okay, this user is asking about renewable energy and government regulations.
Mm-hmm.
How are those two things linked within these documents?
Yeah, exactly. And based on that, it then searches for the most relevant sections within the documents. But it's not just looking for mentions of those keywords, it's looking for them in the specific context of their relationships in the ontology.
Just looking for the meaningful mentions.
The meaningful mentions, yeah. So it gathers the evidence from the ontology graph that's related to the query.
Okay.
And then the LLM, in this case, it's the Gemma 3 model, steps in again.
Right.
But this time, it's using this much richer information. The excerpts from the documents combine with the structured knowledge from the ontology.
So it's combining those two things together to give us a more accurate result.
Exactly, and that's where that reliability comes in.
That makes sense for getting precise answers to specific questions. But how does this help with generating those broader trend analysis reports?
So the ontology is really fundamental for those reports as well.
Okay.
So when it's creating a report, it identifies the most significant topics based on those key concepts.
Right.
And how important they are in the ontology. And then it structures the report in a logical way following those relationships defined in the ontology. So the report flows in a coherent way.
So it tells a story based on how these concepts are connected.
Exactly.
So it's not just a list of bullet points.
Exactly. It's more than that. It's a narrative. And those reports are evidence-based. Because the system knows where all the information comes from, it can give you those summaries that are backed up by the original source documents.
Okay.
So you've got that traceability, and that gives you confidence in the information that you're getting.
You know where everything came from.
Exactly. And the ontology can actually help uncover new insights. By looking at those connections between things, maybe things that you didn't think were connected.
I see.
It might identify trends that you would have missed.
So it's almost like it's doing some of that thinking for us.
It is, yeah.
Right.
And of course, there's that accurate source tracking, so you always know where the information came from.
So this ontology gives us a much deeper, more structured understanding. Let's talk about the specific advantages for reliability compared to just using a vector database and semantic search alone. Why should we trust the results more?
Well, there are several key advantages. First, contextual awareness. We've talked about this quite a bit. Ontologies go way beyond keyword matching, right?
Right.
They give you that semantic understanding. They recognize the entities and those crucial relationships between them. And that means that the AI can actually understand the meaning of the information in its context.
So not just what's being said, but how it fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly. The second advantage is reasoning capabilities. Because the ontology models these relationships, the AI can infer implicit connections that aren't directly stated in the text. So it can actually reason about the information and draw new conclusions, identify links that you might not see. So it goes beyond what's explicitly written.
So that's very valuable for researchers, for R&D.
Oh, absolutely. And the third key advantage is transparency.
Okay.
This is huge when you need to trust the results.
Right.
The ontology provides that clear, structured record of what we know. So when the AI answers a question or produces a report, you can often trace the evidence back through the ontology. You can see how it got there.
So you can see why it's saying what it's saying.
Yeah, exactly. And that builds trust, right?
Absolutely, especially when you're dealing with sensitive information or making important decisions.
Exactly. And then we have consistency.
Okay.
Because we have this single representation of knowledge, the AI is consistent in how it interprets the information.
Right.
So you don't get those contradictions, and you get a more coherent understanding of your knowledge base.
So it's building on that same foundation of understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And finally, scalability. As you add more documents, the ontology can grow.
Right.
New concepts are added.
It's constantly learning.
It's constantly learning and evolving. Exactly.
So let's talk about those of you who are working in those secure environments with smaller language models like Gemma 3.
Yeah.
How does the DX AI Advisor work for you?
So the DX AI Advisor was designed with those constraints in mind.
Okay.
Gemma 3 models are more compact, they're more efficient, they're ideal for places where maybe you don't have a lot of computing power or you've got those strict security protocols.
Right. You can't just rely on the cloud for everything.
Exactly. And that's where those reliability benefits that we talked about, the context, the reasoning, the transparency become really, really important.
And why is that?
Well, think about it. Researchers, reporters, they often handle very sensitive data.
Yeah.
Accuracy is essential. And that ability to understand why the AI is saying what it's saying, that transparency we get from the ontology, that's critical.
And that's especially true in a secure environment.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
and
right.
then there's the fact that it's designed to work with Allama.
Okay. And what is Allama?
So Allama is a local LLM server.
Okay.
So that means that you can run that large language model locally.
Right.
The data never has to leave your secure environment.
So it addresses those security concerns head on.
Exactly.
And it works with a variety of different file types as well, which is important.
Yes, it does. So it's very versatile.
Looking ahead, what kind of future do you see for a system like this? What's the potential?
I think the potential is enormous. I really do. Imagine being able to understand, your industry landscape, your competitors, with a really high degree of confidence in what the AI is telling you.
It could really be a game changer.
It could, yeah. And in the future, we can expect to see those reasoning capabilities become even more sophisticated.
Right.
The AI will be able to make even deeper inferences.
Oh, wow.
And we could also see these systems connecting with other knowledge sources.
So an even richer understanding of the information.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up, it sounds like this ontology-driven approach with the DX AI Advisor and those Gemma 3 models, it's a big step forward in reliable, context-aware information extraction.
It is, and especially when you compare it to just using a vector database or semantic search on their own.
Right. And that reliability, along with those security considerations, makes it really well suited for people who are working with sensitive information and need to understand the AI's reasoning.
Absolutely. And it leads us to a thought-provoking question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Given that ontologies can model these complex relationships, what other areas beyond document analysis could benefit from this?
That's a great question.
Think about your own field.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time.
It really is. There's so much potential out there. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye.
Bye.